This is my 99 Lincoln Town Car. Got a 4.6 liter V8. And the water level was really low recently when I checked it. It's actually okay right now. But this remote reservoir was actually pretty much empty. And then I noticed this. You can see here's the hose that returns to the radiator. This is the thermostat housing. Thermostat's inside of here. And it's quite wet here and down here. I thought, okay, it could be a gasket here or a gasket here. Or it could be both. Or it could just be one here that's dripping down and making this look wet as well. So it could be both, or it could be just this one. That's what I thought. And did a little research, and some people seem to say that if you got a leak here, something's probably cracked. And they talked about some stuff being plastic, which I thought was weird. And then I discovered that the entire intake manifold on this engine is plastic, which I thought was strange. And actually, on this engine, I think this is all original, there's something, it's a kind of crossover, and the radiator fluid, I think, or the coolant flows through it. I'm not sure exactly, goes from here up and over to here. Maybe that's just the way the water gets between the two banks of cylinders, I'm not sure. But that's plastic as well. And some guys were saying, oh, that's upgraded to metal on newer versions of the intake manifold. Anyway, long story short, instead of spending money and time with just these gaskets, not knowing if that would fix it, I just bought a whole new intake manifold, which comes with this crossover, and it's aluminum. The crossover is aluminum, so they updated that to be aluminum. And supposedly that will prevent any further cracking. This car has a lot of miles on it, 185,000, but the whole new intake manifold was just $209 off of Amazon. So I figured that's probably the way to go. So here it is. And I was kind of blown away when I saw this, when I opened the box yesterday. I couldn't believe this would be plastic, but plastic really is an incredible material. Easy to manufacture, tough, durable, so it shouldn't shock me, I guess. And here's that crossover. Here's the thermostat goes in here, the thermostat housing comes up here, and the hose comes off the front. So I think probably the temperature sensor goes in here. So it's pretty fun to take a look at this. It'll be interesting to get it off the engine. It comes with all the gaskets pre-installed, you can see, which is nice. And the air goes in here. The fuel injector sits up here, or the fuel injection, I don't know if that's the plenum or I don't know. The air comes in here. The fuel injector is all bolt-on. I think it's the guys that are bolted onto these. 1, 2, 3, those 4, and 4 over there. That's where the fuel gets injected. Air goes in here. And yeah, that's the deal. So here's the updated crossover made of what looks like aluminum. So first thing I did was take this cover off. It's just a plastic cover to kind of make the engine look nice. And there's just this one bolt. It's a square drive, which is strange. I didn't have a big square drive like that, so I was able to just put a flathead screwdriver in there, and I used a crescent wrench to get more leverage. Unscrewed that. That was pretty easy. Then there's the old crescent wrench. Then I started looking this over. Looks like it's the right part. You can pick different ones depending on which model car you've got, which engine you've got. and maybe they're just slightly different, I'm not sure. So I took the cover off, began looking at things, seeing what I need to do, and it's actually a little bit nerve-wracking. There's so much stuff in here. I believe I can leave the alternator in place. It's bolted on down here and over here. There's a bracket here. I'll need to remove the bracket because the bracket comes up over the top of the intake manifold. So I'll need to remove, this is the main fuel, I guess it's a fuel injection body. I'm not sure exactly, but the air goes in here, comes in from the air filter. I'll remove this. That's probably one of the first things I'll remove is this hose. I'll need to remove this. I'll get this out of the way. It's related to the fuel injection because you can see it's hooked up to the air intake hose there. There's just a bolt there for that. And then we've got, I mentioned what I thought was the temperature sensor. This is the plastic crossover. This screws into it. I think that's the temperature sensor probably. I'll need to remove this, whatever it is. This bar will need to come off. And I think these are the individual fuel injectors here. Not focusing on it, but this is Motorcraft, and there's, yeah, one right here, one right there, one right there, and another one right there. So I'll need to remove those. This nut will let this come up. It'll help this come off. There's another bracket that holds this right here. So it's a ton of little things. Hopefully it won't be a problem getting this out from under here because there's some stuff that goes back underneath here. So it's a little disconcerting because there's just so many little things, but I think what I explained to you is pretty much it. So I really think it's not terrible. I just need to keep track of all the little bolts and nuts. But I think that's the gist of it. So I'll get started and bring you back when I've got something else to show you. That plastic cover just mounted right on top of this, and it had a single bolt which just went right in there. You could actually replace that probably if you wanted to with any old bolt and washer. So that's the story. And actually, you know what? You can see down into the V there between the cylinder banks, and it's just a bunch of space, a bunch of empty space, and I can see the bottom of the intake manifold. So it just sits down in there. When you remove it, it doesn't reveal anything down there in the engine. You don't see the camshaft or anything, I guess. So we won't see too much guts of the engine, just the intakes. I'll try not to drop any nuts or bolts down in the intakes. So that's what I'm doing. 99 Lincoln Town Car 4.6 liter V8, installing a new intake manifold, and hopefully it's this plastic here that's cracked, and the new one will solve my leak. And because it's aluminum here where it's leaking, hopefully it won't break again. Also forgot to mention, this stuff came with it. A couple brackets, I don't know why those would come with it. Some spacers, some screws, nuts, bolts, and a thermostat. Alright, here's where I'm at. I'll give you a few close-ups and talk about a few things. You can see I took the alternator off. It actually was a little easier than I thought. There's the 2 bolts that hold it on. Those are just slotted at the bottom. Camera's not focusing on that too close there. You can see the slots there and there. So you loosen it enough and it just lifts up. It kind of tilts forward as you loosen it. So when you put it back on, I'll set it back on at an angle like this, and as you tighten the bolts, it'll squeeze it up and tighten that belt. So that's the deal there. The reason I took that off, I've got this bracket right here, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get that bracket off. If I can't get that bracket off, then I won't be able to lift this up and out. It'll have to just slide forward underneath that, and that would have been totally in the way, the alternator. So if I can get this bracket off, it might be easier to remove it. These things, which I thought had to do with the fuel injection, each of those is actually a coil and just goes down in there, each one to its own spark plug. I'm not really super familiar with modern engines. I'm used to the kind with the distributor and a single coil. So anyway, one of these things popped out and I'm like, oh, I think that's a spark plug boot. So each one of those is a coil. So I don't know if you got to remove these, but I already had them unbolted. And oh, actually, you know what? Never mind, you do have to, because right here they screw into the manifold. The manifold is what holds them down in place. Each coil. So I did need to undo them, but I thought, oh, I'll undo them anyway because they'll give me a little more working room. But looks like I had to do that anyway. So I'll see if there's an easy way to get this bracket out. If so, that'll make removing all this easier. If not, I'll try to slide this whole thing out underneath it. One thing that's tricky, this is a tube, I think, that goes across and connects those. I think it's just a tube that lets the gas flow between them to equalize pressure on both sides. It's hard to get that off, so I don't know if I don't know what I'll do. Maybe this will all just come out as a unit and I can leave that hose in place and not worry about it. If I can slide the, I don't know if this is called a distribution bar, maybe. If I can just leave those in place, even though I've unbolted them, just 2 bolts, one in the front, one in the rear. Even though I've got those bolts out, I may just leave this entirely in place and remove the injectors and the distribution bars and the manifold all together. And then I can undo this as a unit with the crossover tubes and put them in place on the new manifold. So, and these things, these come off pretty easily, I think. At least they did on the other side. Yeah, so I think I'm close to getting the manifold out. And I've probably been working an hour or so. So that's not bad considering I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, and you can see in there all the coolant that's overflowed, but you can see the engine, the inside of the engine is not open. It's closed right there, and the manifold it's all exposed to the outside world. So that's where I'm at. So something else I forgot to mention, over on the passenger side here, where the fuel feeds in through these 2 guys, I guess. I can't get these off. I don't know why. There are these clips. Can't really see it too well. Anyway, there are these clips that hold. They go on here and like hold this to this, and then there are these plastic clips that clamp onto the tube and go through a little hole in the clip. This camera won't focus close enough, but there's these multiple safety mechanisms that apparently hold this stuff in place, and I removed them all and I can't get these hoses off. They won't come. And it's hooked to this, the distribution bar or whatever it's called anyway. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do. This injector popped out when I just pulled in a little bit, and also the bar came off of the top of that injector when I pulled. So the injectors, they'll come out of the manifold and they'll come off of this bar here if you just tug a little bit. So this bar actually, maybe I can just leave it in place. Maybe I can just pop the injectors all out on both sides, leave these crossovers in place, these crossover tubes. This is going to stay hooked up, I think, whether or not I want it to. So maybe I can just undo the injectors and slide the manifold out from underneath this whole assembly. So that's what I'm going to try to do, I think. So I've made some headway. I took out all the plastic work along there and the windshield wiper mechanism. What's over here? So more nuts and bolts and more stuff to remember how to put on. I thought I would have to get this bracket off, so that's why I removed all this stuff. But even with all that off, I'm not even sure how this bracket comes off. It attaches way down in the back there. And as it turns out, when I looked closer, the bolts, you can see the holes there that hold the intake manifold on. There's no bolt here. It's missing. So you don't need to get the bracket off to get that bolt out. And there's a hole in the top of the bracket to get the rear one out. So I could probably do all that without removing this, but it'd be tight. And there's one bolt. The rear bolt on this side was tough to get to. It's down in there. Maybe I'd be able to get it out without having taken all this off. So what I'm saying is maybe it's possible to do this job without removing the windshield wiper mechanism and all the plastic shrouding. So I was able to get the injectors out. So now this bar with these crossover tubes is just sitting there. I think I can probably slide this out. I might need to undo this bolt and remove this bracket, but I think I can just slide this straight out now, out from underneath, out from under this fuel injection system here. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I think that'll work. So I'll probably do a little vacuuming and maybe get the air compressor to try to blow some of the dirt away before I remove this, so stuff doesn't fall down into the intake runners or intake ports. So I actually did have to remove that bracket over here, right here. So I think I probably did have to remove the windshield wiper shrouds and the wiper mechanism. I don't know, a pro might have been able to do it more easily. Anyway, this is a pain in the neck. I'm at the point where I'm almost wishing I had just paid someone else to do it. But obviously, there's no going back now. There's a little bit of gunk down in there, but I'll vacuum along here with my shop vac. Maybe spray some degreaser on there. Maybe blow some compressed air in there. I don't know. like I was thinking, I just left these fuel injection rails and crossover tubes in place, and the intake manifold just slid out from underneath it. Yeah, take that bracket off. If you do this, you'll see why. Take that bracket off before you try to get these injectors out. There's a hole in the bracket that lets you access the bolt that holds the rear of this fuel injector rail down. But you can get a long socket through there and unscrew it, but you can't get it out then, or at least I couldn't. So if you take the bracket off, that'll be easier if you get the bracket off first. So the bracket was used to hold some of this tubing in place. I'm not sure how critical that is. I'm not positive. I'm gonna put it back. I'll see if it's critical. If it's just for this car's got 185,000 miles. If it's just to hold these wire bundles in place, honestly don't think I care that much. Anyway, all right, I'm gonna clean this up, and then I'll need to. Oh yeah. Well, I'll need to remove this sensor and put it in the new manifold. I'll need to remove this pipe, or this fitting. A pipe goes from there to the heat exchanger, right up against this is right next to the firewall, so for heat in the car. This is just a plug, and I guess I'll unscrew that and put it in there. Put the temperature sensor there. Pop this cap off. Oh, wait a minute. Looks like I'll take that off. Let's see here. Okay, so the hose can go right on there, so that's good. Good to go. I won't need to remove that one. So basically just take this, stick it in the new one. Yeah, and you can see this crossover here. This crossover over to this side is all plastic, and just that one piece of the new unit has been redesigned using metal. So apparently this had problems. So presumably there's a crack in here someplace. So hopefully after all of this, the leak's gone. Not actually sure it's worth all this. I probably could have just checked the fluid level every day and made sure it was full. Anywho, there's all the injectors. Alright, I'll clean it up and start putting it back together. Yeehaw. Alright, a couple things to say here. There was a traditional gasket here where the fuel injection mounts. There's an O-ring here. There were two big gaskets with embedded O-rings on both sides where the intake manifold mates with the cylinder heads. And this one has O-rings already on there in all different places. These O-rings are beefy enough that it made me wonder if they were meant to replace these, or if I needed to buy new ones of these. I didn't know. Anyway, I called O'Reilly Auto Parts, and he said what I was suspecting, which is that I should just skip those gaskets and go with the O-rings that it came with. Just to back that up, I hopped on Amazon where I bought this, because they have a facility for asking and answering questions about any of the products they sell. And someone asked about the gaskets, and there were multiple answers that said it comes ready to install, it comes with gaskets. Different people worded it differently. So that makes me believe that I should leave off those gaskets and leave off that gasket. Where did I put it? Over here. Leave off that gasket and just go with those O-rings. So that's what I'm going to do. I cleaned those off. I'll go over it one more time. And then I'll start putting the new one in. I'll be shocked if I don't have some bolts left over, but I'll do my best. As long as I get good seals, get the electrics and the fuel hooked up properly, that's the main thing. We'll see. So the job's done, and it turned out pretty good. It's running a little bit rough now. I'm guessing one of the spark plug wires didn't get on quite right. That's a little weird. Anyway, it's running rough and needs to have a little bit of the transmission fluid pulled out of it, maybe, because I did the transmission a few weeks ago. Changed the filter and the ATF. And overfilled it a little bit. So anyway, I took it to the shop because I don't want to mess with it anymore. We'll let them hook it to a machine, figure out why it's running rough, take a little bit of that fluid out. But overall, I'm really happy with it. And even though I took it to the shop to have them figure out why it's running rough, I'm convinced I will have ended up saving hundreds of dollars by doing this myself. So I'm overall pretty happy. Just wanted to get one final shot here to wrap up the video. Here's the, let me back up so you can see. There's the whole thing. And what I was pointing at there is it's all plastic. Remember, this is the original one. The new one is metal on the front there. And where the thermostat goes is metal. This one is plastic though. The replacement's metal. The replacement crossover's metal, and where the thermostat goes is metal. This one's all plastic. And you'll see online that people say this cracks. And if you look, there's a crack. There's a crack all up and down there. Maybe I'll take a picture of it. Put that in the video, but you can see the crack there. And I believe why it was leaking, the crack's only on the inside, but I believe the fluid would go through there and probably leak into here where the bolt goes through. So I think that's the deal. In any event, it does not appear to be leaking anymore. So I'm very happy, and it was a ton of work, but I think it solved my leak. Yeah, there you can see the crack better. I'm at a different angle here. That's the crack. You can see it up there on the rim. Looks like even a couple little splits there. Big crack there. Go down in, goes all the way next to the bolt boss, or whatever you'd call that housing, where the bolt goes through. And even spreads down into the bottom a little bit, it looks like. So, pretty serious crack. So, probably worth one day of effort and maybe $100 at the car shop to clean up after my efforts, so that we have a leak-free car now for, who knows, maybe another few years.